Alright, everyone. Part 2 of Chapter 30. Let's make it real. Let's read. I know you, don't I? Yokai questioned rhetorically as he pointed at Riley. You were at the expo. Your hero's little girlfriend from the demonstration. Riley didn't answer, but her body tensed up at the words. Well, so much for the mask, discussed Grouse. Are you planning on stopping me with those? Yokai questioned as he nodded towards the small mass of microbots on Riley's arm. Not exactly, Riley admitted as she concentrated on Yokai, focusing on his emotions over those around her, doing her best to form a mental bond with the other man. Hit him, Anger, Joy instructed. Suddenly, a hot flash of anger ripped through Yokai's head. Letting out a cry of pain and fear, Yokai bent over and clutched the sides of his head. As he writhed in agony, the various swarms of microbots Yokai had been controlling suddenly shook and fell apart, causing him to fall to the ground in showers of tiny robots. What are you doing to me? Yokai demanded through clenched teeth. I'm trying to help everyone, Riley stated as she raised her hands in a placating gesture, causing the pain in Yokai's head to suddenly cease. I want to help you get your daughter back, but I won't let you hurt people I care about in order to do it. I won't let you stop. Ah! Yokai screamed as he moved towards Riley, the microbots around him stirring for a brief moment before he fell to his knees as another wave of pain shot through his skull. Stop it! Riley demanded. Her hands clenched into fists again. I don't want to hurt you if I don't have to. With that, Riley unclenched her fists again, causing Yokai to crumple to his hands and knees, his chest heaving. Alright, Anger huffed. I'm going to need a breather after that one. That's fine, Joy stated. I think we're going to need some sadness for what happens next. I'm still not so sure about this, Joy, Sadness spoke up. Now's not the time to be second-guessing ourselves, Sadness, Disgust sparked. Despite everything that's happened, I don't think you're a bad person, Professor, Riley stated as she silenced her emotions and began pushing a small amount of sadness into Yokai's mind. I don't think you wanted anyone to get hurt. Riley paused as she let the sadness sink into Yokai's thoughts, watching as his shoulders slumped and his head hung down towards the ground. I don't think you meant for Tadashi to die, Riley pushed. As Riley spoke, she felt a pang of sorrow from multiple directions. Glancing to the side, she saw the others watching the conversation with sad expressions. I think we're too open to emotions right now, Sadness stated. What happens if we get hit with a big spike of them? We can't do this with our defenses raised, Joy stated. We just need to hope for the best at this point. Oh God, Yokai whispered to himself. No one was supposed to be in the building. No one was supposed to get hurt. Tadashi. That was him though, wasn't it? Riley continued. Always going the extra mile. Always trying to help people. He was a good man, Yokai stated with a nod. He deserved more than he got. You're up, Fear, Joy whispered, earning a small gulp in reply. He did, Riley confirmed, as she began to push a little fear into Yokai's mind. But that's not what happened, is it? You were to save Abigail, by whatever means necessary. But think about what I said. Think of what Abigail will think when this is all over. When she finds out what you did. As the fear began to eat away at Yokai, he rose up onto his knees and looked down at his trembling hands. What have I done? Yokai questioned. I've killed a man. I'm a murderer. Abigail. She'll never forgive me. All right, Joyce said. Let's bring it home. Maybe, Riley said as she began emanating joy to counteract the fear. We don't know yet. First we have to save her, and we can do that together. Is Yokai gonna get redeemed? Is Callahan gonna... Together? Yokai questioned as he raised his gaze back to Riley. Yes, Riley confirmed with a nod. We can save Abigail together. I just need you to do one thing. What? Yokai questioned desperately. I'll do anything! I need you to take off your mask, Riley instructed cautiously. My mask? Yokai questioned in confusion. Yes, Riley pressed. Remember why we're doing this. Think of Abigail. Abigail, Yokai whispered as he slowly lifted his hands towards the mask. Yes, human. Think of your offspring. The Gorg suddenly spoke up, startling everyone. Turning her attention towards the Gorg, Riley watched as the alien walked over to Yokai and loomed over the masked man. Think of how I will rip her limb from bloody limb if you betray me now. The Gorg snarled as he leaned down towards Yokai, speaking into his ear. As it did, a sudden burst of panic exploded out from Yokai, hitting Riley like a sucker punch. Yep. Galactic Conqueror, ladies and gentlemen. Yokai just ruined Riley's attempt to save Yokai. Or Callahan. Fear! Joy shouted. I'm trying to control it! Fear screeched in reply. But there's a lot pouring off of him! Wait, Riley said quickly, trying to regain control of Yokai's rapidly growing fear. No, wait, don't listen! Do listen, human, the Gorg spat, or I will make sure that your spawn spends its last agonizing moments knowing you failed it. No, I can't fail her! Yokai shouted as he stood up straight, the fear radiating off of him, causing Riley's hands to tremble. Stop! Riley demanded as she launched another blast of anger at Yokai, causing him to scream in pain. Kill her! The Gorg roared. Anger! Joy screamed. I can't hold it! Anger wailed. As he did, Riley felt a sudden inferno of anger spill off Yokai, causing her to clutch her temples and fall to her knees. As she did, Yokai stood up straight and threw both hands out, causing the microbots around him to flare up and shoot away from him like a shockwave, slamming into the others and knocking them all down. Cursing under her breath, Tip yanked up on the controls of the van, rising it into the air enough so that the microbots just clipped the back of the vehicle, sending it spinning into the air as O screamed at the top of his lungs. Gritting her teeth, Tip regained control of the van, leaving it hovering a few dozen feet in the air. As she did, O continued to scream, prompting Tip to slap one hand over the boo's mouth to quiet him. As Riley lay on the ground, groaning in pain, Yokai cocked his fist back before thrusting his arm forward, shooting a giant column of microbots at the girl. Oh, great. Looks like Yokai Callahan is still on the bad guy's side. Well done, Gorg! You've just screwed up. You just screwed everything up. Riley! Bill shouted in a panic as he pushed himself to his feet and rushed forward, leaping towards his daughter just as the microbot column reached her. As the microbot slammed into them, Bill managed to put himself between Riley and the assault, which sent them both rolling a few yards across the ground. Oh no, Bill! Bill! Dang it, dude, why did you do that? Oh, tell me. Don't even think about... Oh my goodness. Groaning in pain after they came to a stop, Riley pushed herself up to her hands and knees. Are you okay, Dad? Riley questioned, before she looked over at Bill and after receiving no answer. Dad? Looking at Bill, Riley saw that her father was laying limply on the ground, his limbs splayed loosely around him. "Oh no," Joy whispered. "Dad?" Riley asked again as panic bloomed in her chest. Scrambling over to him, Riley looked down at Bill and was horrified to see one side of his face covered in blood. Pushing some of his hair out of the way, Riley found a gash cut into the side of his head. "No, no, 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 no," Joy said rapidly. "Daddy? Daddy?" Riley whimpered as she cradled Bill's head protectively, tears welling up in her eyes. As the others recovered, they looked upon the scene with mixtures of sorrow and horror, except for Gogo, whose emotions quickly turned to fury. Spinning towards Yokai, Gogo glared at him as the masked man rose back up into the air on a column of microbots. "You bastard!" Gogo spat, the words causing the others to spring back to their feet and turn their attentions towards Yokai. "Yeah, I'm sorry, but this is a moment where I think a curse word is appropriate." "Go for the mask!" Hiro shouted as he leapt onto Baymax's back before the robot launched into the air. Rushing forward, Baymax reached out towards Yokai, but the masked man easily dodged it aside, sending the robot shooting past him. Turning to face Baymax's retreating form, Yokai thrust his hand at him, sending a strand of microbots shooting out and wrapping around the robot's leg. Whirling his arms around, Yokai caused the microbots to whip Baymax around before slamming him against a wall. The sudden change in momentum causing Hiro to fly off the robot's back and crash through a window into the building. "Hiro!" Honey shouted out in fear as Baymax tried to pull himself out of the part of the wall Yokai had partially embedded him in, only for the masked man to grab him with a strand of microbots and slam the robot against the ground. "Baymax!" the others called as they rushed towards Yokai. "Leaping into action!" Fred shouted as he sprang into the air, fire spewing from his suit's mouth as he rocketed at Yokai. Seeing him coming, Yokai raised a wall of microbots in front of him, shielding him from the flames. As Fred reached him, he grabbed onto Yokai's microbot shield, only for the masked man to use it to slam the young man against the ground. As Fred lay stunned, the microbots picked him up and thrust him against the wall of the nearby building, causing rubble and lengths of metal to break free. Releasing Fred, Yokai allowed the young man to fall to the ground. As Fred lay on his back, strands of microbots wrapped around each of his limbs before pulling on them, holding the young man aloft with each of his limbs fully extended. Pulling the microbots away from Fred, Yokai turned his attention towards Gogo as she came racing towards him. Thrusting one hand forward, Yokai assaulted Gogo with a quick series of columns, but the young woman managed to skate around each of them. Growling in frustration, Yokai made a fist, causing the swarm of microbots that had been crawling across the ground unnoticed to spring into the air around Gogo, forming a sphere that trapped the young woman, causing her to fall to her side. Glancing over at Wasabi, Yokai threw a barrage of microbot strands at him from multiple angles, forcing the young man to slash his plasma blades in every direction to keep them back. Moving a swarm of microbots under two of the concrete slabs that made up a nearby walkway, Yokai lifted them up and rushed them at Wasabi, attempting to sandwich him between the slabs. Distracted by the attacking strands of microbots, Wasabi did not notice the two slabs until they were right on top of him. Letting out a cry of surprise, Wasabi flicked off his plasma blades before lifting his arms and legs up and wedging himself between the two slabs. "Getting a little tight here!" Wasabi grunted as he used all his strength to keep from being crushed. As Yokai lashed out at Honey with a spike of microbots, she nimbly hopped over it before spiking one of her chem balls against the ground, trapping the spike in a blob of blue goo. Still running, Honey tossed another chem ball into the air, where it exploded and trapped 3 more of the microbot spikes in a wad of pink goo. However, another spike suddenly burst through the wad of goo and came shooting down towards her. Letting out a gasp of fear, Honey quickly grabbed 2 more chem balls and slammed them against the ground at her feet, causing a dome of pink resin to form a small dome around her. A second later, the spike broke through the dome, missing Honey's head by bare inches. Quickly pulling back, the spike began rapidly stabbing through the dome, blindly searching for Honey as she called up into a ball and desperately tried to stay out of its way. "This is not going well at all," O proclaimed as he turned a bright shade of yellow. No, Tip agreed as she turned the van towards Yokai. Come on, let's... Tip was interrupted as something slammed into the side of the van, sending it spinning out of control. Both Tip and O screamed in fear as the van went plummeting to the ground, dinging up a chunk of the lawn and the walkway before it skidded to a halt and its engine died. Shaking her head clear, Tip quickly looked around before she noticed a Gorg landing a few yards away, apparently having leapt up and slammed the van out of the air. As she watched, the Gorg began walking towards the van, a grim expression on its alien face. Turning her attention towards the van's controls, and tried to Tip turned her attention towards the van's controls and tried to restart the engine. As she did, the van let out a high-pitched whine before stalling. Come on! Come on! Tip pleaded as she attempted to start the engine again, only for it to stall a second time, prompting her to punch the steering wheel in frustration. Oh! Tip shouted as she turned her attention towards the boob sitting next to her, who was just recovering his senses. Oh, I need your help! Quickly shaking his head clear, O turned towards Tip. What happens? O questioned blearily. Your old boss knocked us out of the sky, Tip explained as she continued trying to get the van started again while glancing over at the Gorg who continued to approach them. I think he wants to talk to you. Going yellow with fear, O looked over at the Gorg as well before he turned his attention back to Tip. We must be getting back into the airs, O wailed. What do you think I'm trying to do? Tip snapped. I can't get the van working. You need to fix it. Turning his attention to the van's dashboard, O quickly slid onto the floor and began examining various components. After a moment, he popped up and looked back at Tip. I believe I found the... O began to say before the passenger window behind him suddenly shattered and the Gorg reached one of his tentacles inside and wrapped it around the boo's midsection before pulling him out as he and Tip screamed in terror. I do not believe I dismissed you. The Gorg snarled before he tossed O back over to the gate, sending the booth bouncing across the ground. As he rolled to a stop, O tried to push himself up, only to be forced back to the ground by Smek. No, Smek said with a slimy grin. You will be staying here now, I thinks. Great view to see as the master and the human crush your little friends. As O watched with wide eyes, the Gorg turned his attention back to the van as Tip continued to struggle to get the vehicle working again. Reaching down, the Gorg grabbed the front of the van and hefted it into the air. Tip screamed in panic as she grabbed hold of the seat to keep from falling towards the windshield. Picking himself up off the floor, Hero looked around blearily at the office he had been thrown into. Pushing himself to his feet, Hero rushed over to the now shattered window he had entered through and looked out. His eyes widened as he caught sight of the predicament all his friends were in. Quickly focusing on Yokai, his blood went cold as he saw the masked man advance on Riley, who was still cradling her father's head in her lap. Riley! Hero shouted at the top of his lungs. Riley, behind you! Hearing Hero's words, Riley turned to look at Yokai, who towered over her from only a few yards away. As their gazes met, Yokai slowly lowered himself to the ground. So this is what you want? Riley questioned as she glared at Yokai from behind her mask. This is the type of person you are? I'm a father, Yokai stated as he pulled his fist back to throw a punch. I'll do whatever it takes to save my little girl. Even if that means killing someone else's little girl? Riley demanded as venom leaked into her words. Yokai went silent at the question and, for a moment, he looked down at Bill before bringing his attention back to Riley. If that's the price I have to pay, Yokai stated before he thrust his fists at Riley, sending a spike of microbots shooting at her head. Then so be it. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. You can read the office whenever you want. I'm not. We're in the end game now, guys, and I'm going to see this all the way through to the end. This week, I'm going to be recording as many chapters, as much of these last 6 chapters as I possibly can. Get ready, guys. The story's been building up to this, and it looks like the payoff is getting, well, it looks like the payoff is getting interesting. So until the next time, I'm the Masked Ranger saying, keep moving forward, and get ready for the conclusion.